And a very good morning to you. It's John Fradgley from the Bell Legal Group, back with you for The Law and You this Tuesday morning. As always, your opportunity to get free legal advice this morning. That's right, free legal advice. All we need you to do is telephone that number, 55208888. The number again, 55208888. Don't forget, of course, that we do have an email address where you can send your email queries, but in order to be on the program on Tuesday morning, today, you would need to get those emails in before today. So if you have a question or a query that you can't ring with, but you would like dealt with in one of our episodes of The Law and You, if you email any time between Tuesday and Monday, then those emails will be available for me to look at and deal with in the program on Tuesday morning. But unfortunately, due to the nature of the program, we simply can't deal with emails that we receive while we're going to air. So if you can just bear that in mind. 55208888, of course, the number. If you live south of the Tweed River, as I often remind you, 07 needs to go in front of the number. Otherwise, you'll be able to get straight through. Thank you to all the people who called in last week and made for a very interesting program. I think we had about half a dozen calls, and also I think a couple of email questions as well. So it's always good to see people using the email to get through. But at the moment, if you have a question, you can get straight through on 55208888. We presently have no callers online. Just a reminder too that it's 113 days until Christmas today. Can you believe it? Oh my goodness. Father's Day has gone, and to all those fathers out there, I hope you had a very happy Father's Day on Sunday, and Christmas is fast approaching, just 113 days till Christmas. So you'll need to really start thinking about that Christmas shopping that you need to do. While we're waiting for some calls to come in, just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One is just in relation to migration generally. There's been a huge amount of press recently in relation to that Sri Lankan family from Biloela, which is a very, very difficult matter, and I'll have a little bit to say about that in a moment. But I just want to make the point that the visa categories to get into Australia have been tightened up significantly. So it is now extremely difficult for people to gain entry into Australia. There are a very limited number of categories. We still do, of course, have our humanitarian visas, and people should not forget that we do take quite a sizable number of people each year on humanitarian grounds. But in relation to the other categories, and one in particular that would be relevant to our audience, there are two. The last remaining relative is one, and the other one is grandparent visas for when parents can come across. And the grandparent visas have been made increasingly difficult to obtain simply because of the cost that is placed on the Australian government in allowing older people to enter Australia. Because obviously if you come in under a skilled visa and you're able to contribute to the economy by working over many years, then at the end of that work you would be entitled to receive the pension. Well, elderly people who come in on grandparent visas are equally entitled to the pension, the old age pension if they qualify, and they're also entitled to Medicare. But of course those people during their lifetime have not contributed to the Australian economy or to the Australian tax revenue, and I think this is probably one of the main reasons why the government has taken an increasingly strict stance on this issue of grandparent visas. But it was certainly something that I noticed when I was a migration agent that was becoming increasingly difficult, and of course an area of quite some distress for children who might be living in Australia. They've now had their own family and they would like their grandparents to be nearby, and the increase in the difficulty for that visa, unless you were able to pay a fairly substantial sum of money to contribute towards the costs of your medical expenses, etc., going forward, then that visa was an extremely difficult one to get. In relation to the Sri Lankan family from Biloela, I do feel I understand fully the arguments on both sides in relation to that matter, and obviously, one has to be very aware of the need for Christian compassion for people. But then the other side of it is that the government does have strict rules in relation to the manner in which people can arrive in Australia, and it was made very clear to this family at the time they arrived, because they arrived illegally by boat, that they would not be able to remain in Australia once the threat in Sri Lanka passed with the end of the war between the Tamils and the Sri Lankans. And so I do feel sorry for the government ministers who see it as their place to uphold the legal requirements for this. One can just hope that this family, if they are in fact deported and go back to Sri Lanka, that it may be possible for them to obtain some form of visa to re-enter Australia in the not too distant future, having particular regard that two of their children, of course, were born here. So one would hope, particularly because it's quite clear that they are more than willing to live in a remote community, as Biloela is, that there might be some basis upon which they can apply once they get back to Sri Lanka, if they do end up being deported, and can do that. So that's enough on that for the moment. We'll be back after this word from our sponsor.
Are you serious about losing weight? Vitadiet has been helping Australians lose weight and live healthier since 1987. All Vitadiet shakes, soups, bars and desserts are gluten-free, made in Australia, and have been perfected over 30 years. There is a Vitadiet eating plan, and yes, you do eat real food. Plus, use the Vitadiet ketone sticks to gauge your fat-burning performance. To find out how you could lose up to 3 kilos in your first week, visit vitadiet.com.au for your local pharmacy or call 1300 Shakes. Vitadiet. Time to try it?
Our sponsor.
Air conditioning installation from just $499 at Harvey Norman. Limited time only. Great deals on Fujitsu, Mitsubishi Electric, Kelvinator and Rinnai, plus 18 months interest free. Yes, a new split system air conditioner plus installation, all with no deposit, no interest and no payments for 18 months. Approved applicants only. Minimum financed amount $500. Interest applies if you do not comply with terms and conditions. Fees and exclusions apply. See website for details. Standard installation only. Air conditioning installation from just $499 at Harvey Norman.
Another sponsor.
And you're in tune with 4CRB. This is The Law and You. It's your opportunity to obtain free legal advice, and it appears no one needs free legal advice this morning, which is very unusual. I think it's the first time we've ever got this far into the program and we've not had any calls online. So if you have a question or a query of a legal nature and you'd like some advice on it, if you get on that telephone straight away, 55208888, we'll be able to take your call immediately. So don't leave it to the last 5 or 10 minutes of the program, where invariably we do get a bank up of calls that we need to deal with. You can get straight through right now, 55208888. The other thing that I wanted to talk about this morning, which has also received a lot of press in recent times, particularly with the collapse of the Raylan Group, is this issue of purchasing off the plan, purchasing apartments off the plan. It also, of course, arises out of the issues that have now developed primarily interstate, but I suspect there are some issues in Queensland as well, with these modern claddings that are used on buildings which make them look extremely appealing from the outside. But of course, as we well know, after the Grenville fire disaster in the UK, there are some major issues potentially with certain types of this cladding. I understand that not all of them are a fire risk. There are some that have been properly manufactured, but there are a lot of cheap types of this cladding that have been brought into Australia and used on buildings, which are potentially going to cause problems going forward. So I'll have a little bit more to say about that in a moment, but we'll say good morning to our first caller, Erica. Good morning, Erica. How are you today?
Hello.
Yes, Erica, how are you?
I'm well.
How can I help?
I'd like to ask, with a will, when we're making one, why do we have to record all our bank account details, and I mean superannuation I understand, but you know it's such a pill to have to look up all our bank account details.
Well, none of that information needs to go into your will, Erica. And in fact, I positively advise clients against referring to particular bank accounts in wills. I've seen wills in the past where someone has said, I remember this case vividly, where someone said, I leave all the money I have in St. George Bank to my nephew. And when they passed away, they no longer had an account with St. George Bank. They'd changed their banking to another bank. And as a result of that, the bequest was what's called a deemed because the account no longer existed. And so the bequest failed and the money in the other bank account simply became part of residue. But where it is necessary and advisable to record those accounts is in a document to assist your executor to have some idea of where your bank records are. So it doesn't mean that you can't change your bank accounts going forward. Obviously, people do, but it is advisable to have what's called an executor's dossier, which records all of that information. And if you do, have the presence of mind to update it going forward so that ultimately when you do pass away, the executor has some idea of where your assets are. All right?
If you haven't got any more phone calls waiting, I have another question.
Look, we can take it quickly. I do have 3 other calls online now, but if it's very quick, we'll deal with it straight away.
What would be the benefits of giving away our house now in order to, say, cut out someone from our will?
Well, do you live in Queensland or New South Wales?
Queensland.
Okay, well, obviously, if you transfer a property to someone now, it's no longer part of your estate and therefore would not potentially be part of a family provision claim if one was brought against your estate. But you do need to realise that once you transfer that property, you've completely lost control of it. And if you, for example, had a falling out with that the person you gave the house to later on, and if you still owned it, you might change your will and not leave it to them. Well, of course, you don't have that available to you any longer. But before you do anything like that, I would strongly recommend that you go and see your solicitor and have a full discussion with them about what you're wanting to achieve and the pluses and minuses of the way in which you're intending to proceed. All right, then. All the best. And the time marches along, 18 minutes past 9. We say a very good morning to Barry. G'day, Barry. How are you? Barry, are you there?
Yes, I am. Am I on air or
You
what?
sure are, Barry. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
No trouble. How can we help?
I'm 88.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had problem with a bleeding nose, which was due to the medication they'd given me.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of that, I fainted or passed out for a period of some 4 or 5 minutes.
Right.
As a result, my licence has been cancelled for 6 months.
Oh, dear.
What's involved with getting my licence back in 6 months' time? Are you able to tell me?
Well, I should imagine the first thing you'd need to do, Barry, are you in Queensland or New South Wales?
Queensland.
Okay, well, I should imagine the very first thing you'd need to do would be to get a medical certificate to say that whatever caused this problem for you has now passed and that you are medically fit to hold a licence. That would be the primary criteria. It's my understanding, I thought once you got to about 80, you needed a medical certificate each time you renew your licence anyway. I'm not 100% sure.
You do, and mine was just due.
Yep.
And no, the doctor refused to
to give you the certificate.
For me.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the very first thing. As to whether you will need to do another driving test to have your licence reinstated, I don't think you would. But what I would suggest you do is ring the Department of Transport and just ask them. But I think if your licence has been suspended because for this reason, then I would think that you wouldn't have to redo the test.
Right. I hope not.
So, I tell you what, Barry, I can tell you right now, I'd hate to redo the test myself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you're not in splendid isolation there at all. All right,
Thank you very much for your advice.
Okay, Barry.
I'll go about it.
All the very best. Time 20 minutes past 9 here on 4CRB as we say good morning to Janine. G'day, Janine. How are you today? Hello, Janine. Are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. Hello.
How can we help you today?
Okay, I have a life insurance policy where I have stipulated the beneficiaries of that policy.
Mm-hmm.
When I die, can anyone contest that?
No.
Right.
No,
okay.
Very short and sweet answer to that question, Janine. So if the life insured is you and you've nominated A, B and C as the beneficiaries of that life policy, then the proceeds of that policy will be paid to them simply upon production of a copy of your death certificate, and the funds, the proceeds of that policy do not form part of your estate.
Excellent. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay then, all the very best. And time marches along as we say a good morning to Chrissy. G'day, Chrissy. How are you today? Chrissy, are you there?
Oh, sorry. I was the radio was.
That's okay. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you, John.
How can I help?
I want to ask you, if I want to buy property in the name of a discretionary trust, and the discretionary trust is called the trustee of the discretionary trust, can the property be bought without disclosing who the trustee is? Like, do I have to give my name, or can the property just be in the purchase of the trustee of the discretionary trust?
No. Who's the trustee of the trust? You.
Well, it is actually me, but...
Right. Well, if you don't want the trust disclosed on the title, what I would... If you were... There are two... Are you in Queensland or New South Wales?
In New South Wales,
Okay,
yeah.
Well, in New South Wales, trusts are not disclosed on the title. So even if you buy... in a trust in New South Wales, they don't put it on the title. So therefore, if for example, you had a company as the trustee, it would simply show XYZ Pty Ltd. But the contract should show the name of the trust as one of the purchasers, and obviously the other evidence is where the money has come from to pay for it. So you have two options there. You can either purchase in your name as trustee, or alternatively you could change the trustee of your trust from yourself to a corporate trustee and then buy in the name of that corporation as trustee.
Right, okay.
All right then.
Thank you very much for your help.
Okay,
John.
Chrissy, all the very best. And the time just comes up to a little bit after 23 minutes past 9 as we say good morning to Nanette. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Nanette, is that right? Jeanette?
Hello?
Jeanette?
Yes, it's me.
Yes, how are you
today? Good morning,
today?
John. John, I need to ask you a question. Earlier on in the program, you mentioned something about immigration.
Yes.
And it's not for an elderly person. I've got a son.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter and myself, we live in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I've got no other family except my son.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently we can't get on the last member of the family visa. Is that correct?
I wouldn't know why you wouldn't be able to do that, Jeanette. I would have thought that if he is the only remaining relative outside of Australia, so you're in Australia, whereabouts does his father live?
His father deceased.
Okay, so the father's passed away?
He's buried here in Australia.
Okay, so there's only yourself and your daughter here in Australia and no other family over there.
My grandson.
Sorry, he's your grandson?
My grandson.
Oh, right. Well, look, I'm not sure about grandsons.
No, but he's my son. I've got my daughter, myself, and my grandson in Australia. And we are all Australian.
Oh, right. And the only person outside of Australia is your son?
It's my son.
Yeah, well, look,
he's
I don't
he's
practice.
A qualified man.
Yeah, I don't practice in the area of immigration any longer. But it's my belief that in that situation that he would come under the last remaining relative. But what I would recommend that you do, Jeanette, if you can have you got a pen and paper handy?
I do have.
Okay, well, if you can just take this number down, 55973366.
Hold on. 5597
3366.
3366. 66.
Yes.
5597-3366.
Yes. Now, if you call, that's Bell Legal Group, and if you call Zoe, Z-O-E, Brereton, B-R-E-R-T.
Z-O-E. Please
Yeah.
spell her name again. What's her name?
Yeah, B-R-E-R-T-O-N, Brereton.
Yes.
She's a registered migration agent, and if you ring up and just tell her that you were talking to me on the radio, and that I recommended that you give her a call. I'm not aware of any changes that have been made to the last remaining relative class of visa, but if you give her a call, she would certainly be able to clarify that for you.
Thank you very, very much, John. Thank you for your help.
Okay, then, all the
and
very
as
best
usual,
with that.
the program is beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that indeed. All the best now. And the time on 4CRB, 26 minutes past 9, just 4 minutes to go in the program, so we have time for one last caller. We did have Cave online, but I'm not sure whether the call dropped out or he hung up, but he or she hung up. There would be time if you want to ring back very quickly. I was talking before about purchasing off the plan and all the issues around that. And for the first 30 or more years of my career, I was involved quite extensively in commercial and property transactions and dealt with a huge number of off-the-plan purchases on properties here on the Gold Coast, in Brisbane, and must say that in all of that time, I never once saw a problem like the problems that are presently being experienced. So I don't know whether it's a sign of the time or what, but Cave is back online, so we'll quickly take that call. Good morning, Cave. How are you? Hello, Cave. Are you there?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, how are you today?
Not too bad, thank you.
How can we help?
Yeah, I'm just inquiring about the pension, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, all I want to know is my wife and myself are both on the pension, and I'm a carer. I care for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I don't have any superannuation or anything like that because I took my super out to pay off the house.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering how much money are you allowed to have in the bank while you're on the pension?
Oh, look, you might be better, Cave, to ring back on Thursday to Finance Forum. I have got those figures in the office because I do need to look at them from time to time for clients when we're looking at people going into nursing homes and retirement villages, and they are readily available. If you rang Centrelink, for example, they would be able to tell you straight away, or if you're reasonably computer literate, you can look it up on the internet as well. The figures are readily available. But if not, if those things are not convenient for you, then ring the same number again, but on Thursday morning at the same time for Finance Forum, and one of the people there from on Finance Forum would certainly be able to assist you with that question.
All right, just quickly while you're there.
Yes.
Like, I'm originally from Fiji, but I've been here 40 years.
Yes.
And I'm an Australian citizen now.
Yes.
Can I go to Fiji and live and just still get the pension?
Did you have to and still get the pension?
Yeah.
Look, you'd have to check with Centrelink in relation to that. I've just got something in the back of my mind that they've made it more difficult for people to receive an Australian pension and live overseas. So I would recommend that you give Centrelink a call and just query them in relation to it.
Oh, thank you, because I saw some Australians living in Bali and all that.
Yes, yes.
Every 3 months or 6 months or something.
Yes. No, well, as I say, look, the best thing to do would be to ring Centrelink and ask them. All right, then. Okay, all the very best then, Cave. Well, that's about all we've got time for. We do have Peter and Elizabeth on the line, so if you can just stay there, I'll take those calls offline. A flurry of calls in the last few minutes, 8 in total. It's always the way. There's always a hiatus at the start and then an avalanche at the end. Thank you for calling and thank you for listening. John Fradgley from the Bell Legal Group. I'll look forward to being back with you for The Law and You this time next week. Until then, goodbye and God bless.